What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the seventh album by Yo Gotti, and this project is called I Am. Basically, this project came out in late 2013 and was kind of the follow-up album to his Live from the Kitchen album from 2012. And I like that concept. It's been quite some time. I reviewed Yo Gotti in some of the early years of Acid Roots. I don't remember how many projects I reviewed, but I know I at least reviewed like Cocaine Music 9, which I think came out in like late 2016, but I reviewed it like in the summer of 2017. Then I also reviewed Live from the Kitchen way back in early 2016. So I want to retouch base with Yo Gotti. He kind of has taken a hiatus from rap music, and I do own a good handful of his albums. This is one that I've rocked with for a while, so I wanted to get a review out for it just because it's been a while since I've touched base with Yo Gotti. So this is pretty stellar album, definitely a pretty consolidated one. Yo Gotti's particular highlight in mixtape music. He's had a lot of hit mixtapes, and he can get hit singles. He's kind of like Busta Rhymes of like the 2010s, I would have to say, where it was always just kind of a welcome surprise seeing Yo Gotti get some of these hits because he has a pretty good track record, even if even if folks, I mean, it's not to say he doesn't have good albums, but just to say, even if you don't agree that Yo Gotti has classic albums, he does at least have hits on every single one of his albums. And that's just a continual situation that he kind of had, especially when he revitalized himself in the early 2010s and stuff. And this is just a good highlight. This has some of his biggest singles on here, has 4 singles. It was just an overall kind of just was just an overall kind of bluesy and out of nowhere project that just kind of lasted a good chunk into 2014. And considering, I mean, I was kind of paying attention to rap music in late 2013, but I was kind of more at home relaxing more with R&B and more kind of pop R&B type cuts, stuff like Drake and those type cats. I can't really think of like Drake in the Weekend and that type of stuff throughout 2013, 2014. But I did start getting into other things. But this is kind of one that I overlooked when it first came out, but I definitely picked up on it like a few years later and continued to like it. So that's just kind of the thing about it. But I do definitely feel like this is an album that's chock full of club cuts on here and has some great singles, and just overall it's pretty well produced. This is definitely a highlight for 2010's production in terms of rap albums. The thing about it kind of was this was kind of in touch and very relevant to the times of 2013, where that was kind of a transactionary year because of the fact of 2010's trap getting ready to popularize the stuff like Migos and Future, Moneybag Yo, 21 Savage, some of those type folks that kind of came out and started doing that sort of stuff around this time. It was just a good assortment of folks, but this was kind of like the prenatal stuff before that was completely central. Just the kind of glitzy Instagram kind of years of some of that 2010s trap. This was kind of more in like the earlier stages of it, but Yo Gotti took to this phase of Instagram life and kind of maybe not Instagram life like he was a social media freak, but just kind of the concept of saying that that sort of time period where 2010's trap was starting to become predominant, he took to that like a fish to water. So it was just pretty awesome to kind of get that context. And it is like this album feels different to me from Live from the Kitchen, where that still kind of felt like more early 2010s and just kind of more in like a Dirty South kind of era of things, kind of the stuff that Birdman and Lil Wayne were kind of doing back in 2008, 2010. But this one really feels like I said, the early kind of the skeletal kind of foundation of what 2010's trap would be that continues to be dominant today. I mean, not every single song sounds like that, but there's definitely some good glitzy kind of tunes that are pretty good for kind of like not just street tunes, but also for like the glitzy social media life, like flexing on Instagram and other places like Twitter and some of those type places where it's just kind of more socializing, maybe even Snapchat, even though that would happen years later. So that's just kind of the concept behind it. But I do appreciate the context. So I'm going to talk about the singles. There were 4 of them. There were 4 singles on this project. The first one was Act Right, and this has Jeezy and YG on there. This is a pretty like harrowing club cut. I definitely would have to say this is definitely one that has a lot of kind of sneering and kind of synthy kind of energy towards it. This has a nice kind of bleary kind of instrumental on there. Just really feels kind of oozing, and definitely a song that you'd smoke to in the club and that type of stuff. Definitely a VIP kind of flashy. I mean, this was pretty lit back when it came out in the summer of 2013. This is definitely one that just felt like very emphatic for the time. I mean, like I said, I want to say I at least heard this song a couple of times, but I just look after this was kind of a more flashy one for the way that club cuts were starting to get a lot more emphasized compared to the way they were in the 2000s. This was kind of where 2010s club bop started really kind of getting a lot crunchier and just being more like overall emphatic and really kind of having the flashiness that they did. This is a good example of a 2010s club rap song. This is definitely a highlight for that. And it just all three of them drop good verses. It's good to see Jeezy on a kind of contemporary tune after his prime years, because Jeezy was kind of starting to fade into the background a little bit in 2013. I mean, he was kind of in his second win, but this is definitely a highlight for Jeezy later in his career after his 2000s era. So that's a good look for Jeezy. And then YG was kind of like the new gun back in like 2013. He was on the verge of blowing up and that type of stuff. So it was a good look for him to get one of his initial hits and that type of stuff. That just kind of works for that. King Shit is the second single. And this one, I didn't like this song when I first had this album, when I first bought this album. It took me a little while. Probably just recently I just started liking this song. But I do kind of feel like it's a pretty skeletal song. I think the reason why I didn't like this song initially is because of the chorus. But I just look after it. This is really kind of an addled, drug addled kind of song. This is definitely one that you would listen to when you're really kind of feeling it and kind of fucked up a little bit and twisted a little bit and that type of stuff. I just feel like this is a high octane kind of energy kind of song, and it has T.I. on here, but this is a weird song to kind of get T.I. on, because normally he's on like these smoother type songs, a little bit more refined and relaxed and just a little bit more central. But this is one where T.I. is actually kind of jivey and a little bit rowdy. It's kind of like when he was on Never Scared by Bone Crusher and that type of stuff. And this is kind of an out of character one for T.I. And this is kind of one where you can kind of feel like the anguish in his voice a little bit, as he kind of, I mean, he's not in anguish on the song, but he just is a little bit more jived up this time. It's just interesting kind of get him a little bit more jivey in that sort of sense. So Yo Gotti handles it. He's kind of smooth on the song, but it's just kind of one that just has a little bit more high octane energy despite how skeletal the beat kind of is. But this is a pretty relatively solid club cut. Not as good in my opinion as Act Right, but it's not saying that it's a bad song. It has a different, this kind of more minimalist, but it pulls it off. So I just would have to say I'm not going to complain about King Shit, because it is a pretty solitary and effective song. So it's just a nice highlight. I appreciate it way more than I initially did. So the third single is Cold Blood. I didn't really care for this song. It has J. Cole on there and another cat on the hook, which is Kanai Finch or something like that. But I didn't really appreciate this one. This was trying to be like soulful type stuff, but I don't quite see Yo Gotti as quite as convincing a soulful rapper. Like if this had been Rick Ross that had done this song, I probably would have liked it a little bit better. I mean, J. Cole has done these soulful songs, so I know that he is able to do it, but somehow Yo Gotti just didn't come off with the capture of what I would have liked. I mean, I feel like Yo Gotti definitely has these trap songs down real well, and he's good at doing these club cuts and that type of stuff. Trap, club, and southern hip hop and that type of stuff. I didn't quite see it as convincing with the soulful type stuff, at least on this album. I mean, Pride to the Side is another song like that one. That one pulls it off better, but Cold Blood, it just didn't quite feel as captivating, because soulful songs are supposed to make you want to smoke one and just kind of reminisce and be introspective and that type of stuff. I didn't really see that vibe for Cold Blood, so that's kind of the thing. But I Know with Rich Homie Quan was the fourth single, and this samples like, I forget the name of the group, but it's like the folks that did I Got Five on it, and this is a particular highlight. I Know is another solid club cut from Yo Gotti that proves that he had an active nightlife throughout the making of this album. It's just another overall hit, and this is just real one. This has a lot of bleary kind of energy. If you like the beat from I Got Five on it, it's basically the same vibe as far as that. It's just kind of a more drug-addled and distorted, bleary kind of vibe with that, but it's just basically the concept. It's just a great song to kind of zone out and just kind of feel the motions of like the drink or something like that that you have while stepping out and that sort of thing. That's just kind of the concept. So out of 13 songs on this album, I wound up liking 9.5. So this project pretty much almost got a 10 out of 10, but it's just like a half a song short of like not getting that. But I'll go ahead and list the songs I recommend. So those songs, those 9.5 songs would be Act Right, King Shit, I Know, LeBron James, I Don't Want It, Sorry, Respect That You Earn, Pride to the Side, and Don't Come Around. And the ninth song is Don't Come Around. And then the almost song is Die a Real Nigga. So that would be almost 10. So that's 9.5 out of 13. So basically, talk about some of these. I feel like so to talk about some of these, I feel like one of the most immediate club cuts on here would be LeBron James. This is a really flashy and glitzy kind of song. This is definitely one of the biggest flex songs. Like if you need another song like Act Right, I definitely feel like LeBron James is one of the best bets. I mean, it's named after a star basketball player who was in his prime as this song was made back in 2013. So it's definitely an exuberant highlight, and it does LeBron James justice. It's just an overall flashy kind of song, definite kind of flex song. I feel like I Don't Want It. It's kind of like a stock vanilla kind of club cut. This is one just talking about that Yo Gotti doesn't want the deal if it's not like the full deal, saying things like, if the whip doesn't come with expensive shoes, I don't want it, and that type of stuff. So it's just kind of that concept as far as saying that he doesn't want his jobs half-assed. That just kind of happens to be the context. Pretty nice vanilla club cut. I feel like Sorry's kind of another vanilla. Sorry's kind of another vanilla club cut. This one's a little bit fancier. This is kind of in between LeBron James and I Don't Want It, where I feel like I Don't Want It's kind of more vanilla, but this one's a notch above I Don't Want It, but not quite as flashy as LeBron James. This has that same kind of context. These are just glittering and tittering, kind of sparkling kind of club cuts on here, but it's just interesting kind of get Yo Gotti on some of these type vibes. These are definitely some highlights that I've continued to rock with. Respect That You Earn. Respect That You Earn's a nice highlight for the ladies, which is just about kind of the concept of not necessarily saying that you're just gonna throw yourselves at women and kind of kiss the ground that they walk on and that type of stuff. It's just about saying that you have to earn respect. And I kind of like the concept of it. It's a good highlight for Yo Gotti here. This is a pretty good early Instagram life kind of highlight and just overall stuff like that. Just a nice kind of light and kind of more popish, kind of more glossy, kind of R&B club cut on here. It's just a nice one for that sort of thing. Could have probably used another song like that. Don't Come Around is kind of a club cut on here. This one really feels like something that like the guy that did What Is Love, it just really has like a 90s kind of club type feel towards it. This really feels something ripped out of 1993 or 1995 or something. This has that kind of Euro pop, kind of techno, kind of pulsating feel about it, but it's just a nice one. Is because Yo Gotti kind of gives off some serious kind of lyrics about it. It's not just a typical jovial kind of stepping out kind of joint as much as it is kind of one with some lyrics with some meaning. So I like the concept. I like the production on Don't Come Around quite a bit, but it does kind of have like lyrics that are not quite as frivolous. I do like that concept. I'm trying to think of some other ones on here. I think I about covered it all. I think that about takes care of it in terms of the albums. Like Die a Real Nigga is definitely like an Instagram heavy song. This is a song that I could hear in a lot of people's stories on Instagram. This is just has that kind of glitzy kind of this flashy kind of lifestyle towards it. I just like the concept of it's glitzy like LeBron James and Act Right. This is probably one of the glitzier songs on this album. Definitely one of the flashiest ones. You would think that this would have been an easy highlight for me, but I don't know. I mean, I like it, but it's so I like Die a Real Nigga, but the reason why it's an almost song is because it just didn't knock my socks off in terms of the production. Like I did feel like it's similar in flashiness and flex kind of vibes to LeBron James and Act Right, but somehow the beat loop just did not quite hypnotize me as much as I would have wanted it to. Where it is a nice one, but I just felt like it kind of had a little bit of a learning curve towards it. But I do feel like this song is one of the initial kind of trap 2010s trap kind of tunes, where this one was just different. This was kind of the more one of the most contemporary kind of songs on here compared to the stuff that like Yo Gotti was doing prior to this. This was definitely one that kind of felt like it could fit right in with something from 2015, 2016, or even further than that, like 2017 or later. And I just kind of feel like the concept where I do like the song, I do like the song, but it just didn't win me over wholesomely. But it is a nice one. So that's just kind of the concept. But yeah, to talk about the rest of this album, like some of the 4 songs that I didn't like, or the 3 songs I didn't like I already talked about not liking Cold Blood. I don't, maybe I didn't talk about Pride to the Side. Maybe I didn't talk about Pride to the Side. So Pride to the Side is kind of like a nice soulful tune. This is one. Pride to the Side. Pride to the Side is a soulful tune that kind of talks about some of the hardships that Yo Gotti kind of had to deal with, like kind of a baby mama that kind of is not as wholesome as he would like. And then like a buddy of his from way back that kind of got into drugs and that type of stuff. But it really comes off. This is the more soulful one out of Yo Gotti that I would have liked. I would have liked a more kind of emphasized, kind of stylish beat like this compared to how Cold Blood kind of was. But this is one that was just really simple and just kind of definitely like a reminisce, just kind of smoke a cigar, smoke a stogie, something like that, and just kind of reflect in that sort of moments. It just had a little bit more emphasis. But to talk about the three songs I didn't like, which was just "I Am" the title track, "F You," "Fuck You," with Meek Mill, and then Cold Blood. So I talked about why I didn't like Cold Blood. This wasn't compelling enough. "F You" I kind of didn't like just because I mean, this was actually the most popular song on Spotify. This was the song that got the most plays. It seemed like a lot of folks liked this song, but I couldn't quite get into the kind of awkward production on here. I mean, I didn't really like the hook that much. Like I feel like on FU, like I didn't really care too much for the hook. It was just kind of an odd placement of one, and then on top of that, like the kind of distorted kind of beat in the verses, it kind of felt like a song that you would listen to as you were really getting fucked up, kind of similar to King shit. But I kind of feel like this one just was not quite enjoyable enough to really have that. I mean, this was kind of a distorted kind of more disruptive kind of song, but I don't know. It just I couldn't see quite as much connection with it. I mean, I like the concept of at least kind of having like some of these high octane energy kind of songs, but when they don't have like the most adamant production as to how they do it, it just didn't quite connect well enough to really get that. But I did like at least the angle of the energy that it was trying to convey. I just felt like the production just didn't match up with what the song was trying to attempt. I feel like King Shit pulled it off better, but Fuck You just was not quite captivating enough, at least in terms of sonically doing that. And then I really felt like probably the title track "I Am" had the weakest beat on here. It was just kind of trying to be kind of more of like yeah, I just didn't gel with the title track "I Am." I just didn't connect with how the production kind of went on there. It was just kind of one of the odder picks for how this kind of went. I would have liked a different kind of side of Yo Gotti as far as trying to get that one. I mean, I feel like Yo Gotti, like I said, he definitely has these trap cuts and club cuts and some of those kind of flashier moments on here. But when it comes to like showing like the vividness that someone like Tupac or someone like Rick Ross or Lil Wayne can kind of show. I just feel like I mean, Yo Gotti can definitely get singles, but in terms of like album cuts, they're not kind of flashier. It just felt like some of these didn't quite deliver quite as heavily because most of the best moments on here are just the stepping out kind of moments. It's not to say Yo Gotti can't do them, but it just didn't have the capturement this time around. I just didn't see the energy behind some of these ones that weren't more flashy. So that's just kind of the concept about this album. I mean, I'm gonna give this album me liking basically 9.5 out of 13. I'm gonna give this album like a 9.5 out of 10. I think that's pretty solitary enough. Just basically a half a song. If I just would have liked Die Real Nigga a little bit better, which I was close, but it just did not it didn't quite sail to me as much as a wholesome song that I would listen to every single time or a lot of times when I listened to it. I just wonder how many times if I were to hear it in a shuffle that I would sit through it, despite the fact that it's flashy and it's definitely an exorbitant song, but I don't know how many times I would, listen to it and such. It's just kind of, I'm on the fence about it. That's why it's an almost song. So, but 9.5 out of 10 this album gets, and I feel like Yo Gotti packed this album to the gills with plenty of stepping out moments, plenty of flashy moments, especially for 2013. This was a very litty and kind of hype album that just kicked a lot of ass. But I just would have to overall say that, if there was anything to complain about, it just would be the fact that in terms of other album cuts, like Cold Blood really didn't pull it off, and the Fuck You song just didn't wield the right energy properly. And then I Am was just about the only other song that wasn't flashy in some sort of way that just didn't pull off any sort of compelling vibe. So this is kind of the concept. I mean, I know Yo Gotti has songwriting and he can definitely make hits, but that's about the only real minor complaints I can really come up with. So that's just kind of the whole thing. But 9.5 out of 10. Now the social score I'm going to give a 10 out of 10 because this album out of 13 songs is chock full of stepping out moments. And like I said, this is like a toolkit, and this is like a supply kit that you want to have. This definitely would have been a supply kit for 2013, 2014, 2015 or so, back when this album was still relatively new, but still a relatively good toolkit to have for stepping out nightlife throughout the certain times. Just because Yo Gotti is not someone who's really at the forefront of talking about in rap music all the time. So it's just kind of something to look into and say, hey, this is kind of some good stepping out moments for a few months or a summer or something like that. So this is kind of the thing. In terms of the future, like Yo Gotti, like I said, has stepped away from music, but he's been doing like compilations and he has artists that he's signed and stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. But I am going to have to review some more of these. So that's kind of the thing there.